Hi, this is Remembering the Past, a show where we talk about people who died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. We're going to be dance intensive tonight, but before we do our dancers, we're going to do a legendary hockey player, Red Kelly, who died recently at the age of 91. Red Kelly won 8 Stanley Cups, 4 as a defenseman with the Detroit Red Wings in the 1950s. He played on those teams with Ted Lindsay, whose podcast we just did, and 4 with the Toronto Maple Leafs as a center in the 1960s. That's pretty much unheard of. On top of that, he was also a member of Parliament in the 60s while he was playing hockey. He was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1969. They waived the traditional waiting period. Here's an NHL report on the career of Red Kelly.
Red Kelly is one of the most amazing stories of any sport. He plays junior hockey for the St. Michael's junior team in Toronto, and guys either went from St. Mike's to the Maple Leafs or from St. Mike's to the Red Wings.
Though not a highly touted prospect, one Detroit Red Wings scout saw potential in Leonard "Red" Kelly.
All the scouts were betting money that he'd never make it. Carson Cooper was the only smart scout at the time. He knew his talent.
They offered me $100 to sign, so holy man, I was eager. Somebody wanted me.
Kelly made his NHL debut in 1947.
I played 12 and a half years in Detroit, and we won 7 straight league championships, and we won 4 Stanley Cups. I was an all-star 6 years in a row.
Great defenseman. Humble guy, strong, good leader, but a quiet leader. Red Kelly in Detroit was known as the best defenseman in the game.
Red Kelly displayed offensive flair and defensive prowess, capturing the Norris Trophy in 1954. However, an injury in 1959 changed his career.
I break my foot in practice, so they put a cast on, and our team was struggling a little bit, and they go on the road 3 games in a row, and they lose 1, 2, 3, and they come to me and said, "Do you think you can take the cast off and we'll tape it up and you can play?" And I said, "Well, I can try." I played the rest of the year that way. I didn't have my best year, no question.
The next season, recovered and returned to form, Kelly revealed the story to a reporter.
They write it up big in the weekend paper in Detroit. The headline was about this big. Ted Lindsay's wife called my wife and said, "Have you got your bags packed?" I got traded that night.
Kelly originally opted for retirement over being traded. However, eventually he agreed to a deal that sent him to Toronto.
Kelly winds up with the Maple Leafs, and punch him like, I mean, this is genius.
If we're going to win the Stanley Cup, he said, we're going to have to go through Montreal. And he said, I've got to get somebody to check Bellow. And he said, Red, I'm thinking of putting you at center.
And it's like he was a center his whole life.
Well, he slid into that role of centerman quite easily because he was an all-round player. He could skate and shoot and score.
Marvelous accomplishment to be an all-star defenseman and become a center and be an all-star there. He's the only guy that I know of who could have done that.
And also while being a member of Parliament. Now, it staggers the imagination to think how a guy can practice in the morning, get on a plane and fly to Ottawa, and come back for a game.
He is the catalyst for them winning cups 62, 63, 64, and, of course, 67.
Red Kelly's 20-year career came to an end in 1967 after capturing his 8th Stanley Cup. He retired as the only player to win 4 Stanley Cups with 2 different teams.
What could be more amazing?
Well, we're going to move from hockey to dancers, and our first dancer is David Winters, who died recently at the age of 80. David Winters was a nice Jewish boy born in London, moved to New York City. He started dancing when he was a teenager, danced a lot on early variety shows on television, but he got his big break in 1957 when he had the role of Little John, one of the gang members in the Broadway production of West Side Story. He had a role in Gypsy, but he really made it big with the film production of West Side Story in the early 60s, where he was another gang member, Arab, and he was definitely noticeable on the screen. That launched his career in dancing on television. He was the head choreographer for Hullabaloo. Hullabaloo was the NBC rock show around 1965, and they featured go-go dancers, and he was the one who choreographed them and occasionally would dance himself. He choreographed Ann-Margret and Elvis in Viva Las Vegas. It's the only movie where a female co-star steals the show from Elvis. And he choreographed both Elvis and Ann-Margret separately in their careers. Went on to do the Monkees and a whole bunch of other things, and I'm going to let him tell the story here in an interview he did in Thailand a couple years before he died.
Elvis musical director Peter Mance has just released a brand new album with special arrangements of some of the music he's played on this show. Well, tonight our choreographer, David Winters, is going to dance to one of those swinging wild arrangements. So, ladies and gentlemen, David Winters dances Peter Mance.
In 1965, across America, Hullabaloo was NBC's top-rating musical variety show. Its lead choreographer and dancer, David Winters, went on to direct or produce over 200 shows, specials, and films. In fact, there are few people in the TV and movie industry who can match the accomplishments of this showbiz legend. A performer from the age of 13, his career has spanned acting, dancing, singing, directing, producing, choreography, and writing.
I started out when I was 13 years old in New York City on stage and on television, a lot of television.
Soon afterwards, David originated the role of Baby John on Broadway's West Side Story, and in 1961 went on to star as Arab in the multi-Academy Award-winning movie version, which launched him into the world spotlight.
And so I went to Hollywood. I was about 18, 19 when I did that. And that picture was released, and of course then it kind of made me very, very popular in America and very, very well known. And because it won 10 Academy Awards, that picture.
Cool it, Arab, cool it, cool it.
As a dancer and choreographer, he was the force behind the sexually charged movements of Elvis. He also worked with Ann-Margret and often with Nancy Sinatra.
I was very fortunate that actually Ann-Margret was one of my pupils, and she was doing a picture with a guy named Elvis Presley, and she recommended me for the movie, but they already had a choreographer. So she insisted that the director come and look at my dance class. So he came to dance class and he really loved it, and he fired the choreographer they had and hired me. So that was my first job as a choreographer, and then I became Elvis's choreographer because Elvis and I got along so well in that picture, and I wound up doing 4 movies with Elvis. I call him El. We had a great relationship. He was a good friend of mine.
What was he like to work with?
He was wonderful. He was so easy, and he just listened. He was a very humble human being, extremely humble. He never changed from when he was first discovered, you know. He appreciated everything he had. He loved life, and he was a real, real friend. I mean, many years later on, I got arrested with a girlfriend of mine in Vegas, and he bailed me out. He sent the bail. Anyhow, the point is that I did 4 movies with Elvis. I wound up doing 5 movies with Ann-Margret. I did her stage show, and I did 2 specials with her. I worked with Barbra Streisand, who's been someone I've known since I'm 18 years old. Another legend. Diana Ross, I did all of her shows for 3 years, both her stage shows and her television shows. I've worked with a lot of people, big stars, Paul Newman and Kirk Douglas and Cher and Sonny and Cher and Bobby Darin, who was a wonderful performer. I was very fortunate to be in an era where we had some great talented people. I was lucky enough to work with them.
He was also the producer and creator of the first music videos for the original boy band, the Monkees.
They also were a big music group. That was my first directing job, was the Monkees. And we used to do what we called romps. We did 2 of them every show. So we would take a song, we take cameras like your camera here, and we just go crazy on the streets with them and tell them do this, do that. And we just filmed it, and then we edited it together, which is what they do with a lot of music videos today. So we did basically the first music videos. We didn't call them music videos, we called them romps. The group was a big singing group. I mean, they sold millions. They were the first group that knocked the Beatles off the chart in America from the #1 spot.
Well, we're going to close with our feature, Norma Miller, who died recently at the age of 99, another great dancer. She was known as the Queen of Swing. She started out in Harlem when she was a young girl, and she became one of the great Lindy Hoppers of all time. Lindy Hop, the popular dance of the late 20s and early 30s, named after Lindbergh. She also danced in the movie Hell's a Pop, and she was in the extended dance number and did a great job in Groucho's A Day at the Races. I'm going to let her tell her story being discovered at the Savoy when she was 12. The Savoy was the center of swing music in Harlem.
Hard times hit Black America hardest, and the optimism and entrepreneurial spirit that had been at the heart of the Harlem Renaissance collapsed almost completely, but the people of Harlem endured. In the cold winter of 1929, Norma Miller, a widow from Barbados, and her two daughters, Norma and Dot, were forced to move out of their apartment across the street from the Cotton Club. As a small girl, Norma had danced to the music of Duke Ellington as it spilled out through the door, the Charleston and Black Bottom, the Shimmy, and the Shim Sham. But now, her mother couldn't come up with the rent. Their new home was a smaller third-floor flat on 140th Street, just behind Harlem's biggest and most beautiful dance hall, the Savoy Ballroom. The Savoy covered a whole city block on Lenox Avenue, between 140th and 141st Streets, employed two bands at once so that the music need never stop, and was so popular with dancers that its maple and mahogany floor had to be replaced every 3 years. Just 50 cents on weeknights, 75 cents on Sundays. The Savoy was called the home of happy feet and offered depression-ravished Harlem a respite from its troubles.
The windows was wide open, and so the music can come out, blast right into our living room. Every night we heard this marvelous music. And in those days, in the summer, the fire escape was where you sat to be cool. There was no air conditioning, nowhere. So by sitting on a fire escape, and our fire escape faced the back windows of the Savoy Ballroom. And you ever see shadows when people dance past the windows? You can see figures dancing to that music. And my sister and I would respond to what we saw in the windows of the Savoy, and we would get into the living room and dance to some of the best bands in the world.
For years, Norma listened to the music and dreamed of going inside. In the spring of 1931, she got her chance.
Precisely, it was Easter Sunday, 12 years old. And you know, in those days, you always had a new outfit to go out to church. 4 o'clock is a matinee going to be at the Savoy Ballroom. And after church, I dashed up to Lenox Avenue. The people that went into the Savoy were sharp. And we used to just stand outside to watch them, and that's what I was doing. We started dancing outside the Savoy Ballroom. And I heard somebody say to me, "Hey, kid." And I turned around, and he said, you. And then I turned around, and I recognized immediately who it was. It was the great Twist Mouth George in a white hat, white suit, white everything, asking me to come into the ballroom to dance with him. And he said, "Would you come and dance?" I said, "Would I?" He grabbed me, we dashed up the stairs, and I don't know whether I hit each step because he had such long legs. And I remember just flying up those stairs with him. And you go through these doors, and I think it was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen in my life. The reds and the greens and the blues. And that was the first time I ever saw a band on a bandstand. I mean, I'd been seeing the shadows. I'm so excited. He took me over there in the corner and sat me down and brought me a Coke and said, "You sit here and I'll come and get you." And finally, it was his turn for Twist Mouth George to come, and he came and got me, and he said, "Let's go." When they hit that music, all I know is I did everything. He just threw me out. My feet never touched the ground. The people were screaming, and he put me on top of his shoulders, walked me around the ballroom, and the people is clapping and talking about Twist Mouth, and he took me right around to the front, right outside, and put me back outside. Greatest moment in my life, and I'm excited. I'm gonna go home and tell my mother and my sister. And then I said, "No, I better not say nothing."
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps, as a final tribute to Norma Miller, the Queen of Swing. We'll play What Else? It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. But instead of playing the Duke Ellington version, we'll play the Count Basie version, because she always liked to dance to the Count Basie band better than any other.
We gave America swing. We gave the world swing. And if nothing else, today you got swing in the world because of us. And I tell everybody that. So I can sit down and say, well, got to be something all right with it. Wasn't bad for Count Basie. Or Duke Ellington. I mean, that ain't a bad group to hang it out with.